Europe, full of U.S. allies and trading partners, must grin and bear it. The 27-member European Union, under the threat of 50% tariffs from President Trump, buckled and accepted 15%, 9 times higher than last year. Now, the Europeans did win some carve-outs, some zero-tariff carve-out rates for things that America needs, specifically aircraft, machines that make computer chips, chemicals, and raw materials. Europeans hope that pharmaceuticals will be exempted similarly and that the 15% tariff rate on wine will also be somehow washed out. We don't know about that. Why? Because the details, as is always the case with Trumpian trade announcements, remain murky and possibly subject to change. But we do know this. There is trade peace between the United States and its largest trading partner. At what aggregate price? Who will pay it and for how long? That, my friends, is the great economic X factor of what remains of this summer and the fall and the winter. Another X factor for the president, duration unknown, the political fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein matter, which, no matter the many and varied attempts by the president to diminish it, distract from it, remains a persistent and potentially potent thorn in his side. We will discuss this case from the victim's perspective with an attorney who represents several victims who still await clarity on who is involved and who, if anyone, will be held to account legally. Also tonight, the president took action in Gaza that finally acknowledged 3 facts that have been true for weeks. Fact 1, food shortages were leading to starvation. Fact 2, Israel could do more to alleviate the plight. And fact 3, America's voice, once roused, would probably set new helpful actions in motion. We will dig deeper into the trade deal with the European Union with our good friend Kelly O'Grady, but we're going to begin tonight with Weijia Jiang, traveling with the president in Scotland. Weijia, it's so good to have you with us. It was a very busy few days there with the president. We will get to the trade deal in a second, but help our audience understand what the president said about Russia and the actions he suggested are in motion now in Gaza.
Well, Major, you know President Trump has been trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine for several months now. Even before he took office, he said it's something he wanted to do. And he has become increasingly frustrated with Vladimir Putin. And if there was any question about whether their honeymoon has ended, he made that clear today. He said, I don't even want to talk to Putin anymore because it's clear that he really doesn't want to do anything to work toward ending the conflict or negotiate a peace deal. Also, earlier this month, he said similar things and said that Putin would have 50 days to reach a peace agreement or face punishing secondary sanctions. And today he said he was moving that deadline up and that in 10 or 12 days, if Russia does not have some sort of an agreement, some sort of an off-ramp to the conflict, then he will impose those secondary sanctions, which would be in the form of secondary tariffs on other countries that continue to do business with Moscow, countries like China, Brazil, and India. And so he is making very clear, Major, that he has zero patience left for Vladimir Putin, and we are waiting for Putin's response. But previously, he has called similar thoughts theatrics, Major.
And what can you tell us about what the president said and possibly new actions in Gaza to alleviate the humanitarian crisis there?
Well, the president didn't explicitly disagree with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said that there was not starvation happening in Gaza, but he walked right up to the line and said, you can't make that up. And he said, you know, just look at the children who are starving in Gaza. And he agreed that there needs to be more humanitarian aid, more points of entry allowed to get food and supplies into that area. But, you know, Major, it's important to note that earlier this weekend, he also expressed frustration that he wasn't getting enough gratitude for the tens of millions of dollars he says the U.S. has already poured into the humanitarian effort. And he said no one has said thank you, which begs the question, who is supposed to say thank you? But he is coming around amid mounting pressure from world leaders. Of course, today he was with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who put on some of that pressure to do more.
And Weij, before I let you go, how is the trade deal negotiated based on what we know? I think there are a lot of details yet to emerge between the United States and the European Union landing.
Well, it depends on who you ask, Major. Remember, the EU is made up of 27 countries, so it's no surprise that the response ranges from relief to the fact that it's not going to be the 30% tariff rate that Trump had threatened to kick in on Friday if a deal had not been reached, to very sharp criticism of the deal. The French said it is a dark day when the EU gave in to the USA. Hungary's prime minister went even further and said that Trump ate the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for breakfast. And that is because the EU is not retaliating against that 15% tariff rate that is going to be imposed. Even though it's not 15%, it's not nothing. And so those countries in particular, they want more concessions, as you mentioned. The French want their cosmetics and particularly their wine to have some sort of an exemption. Major.
Traveling with the President of Scotland, Weijia Jiang, thanks so much for starting us off with so much information. Really appreciate it. I want to turn now to Kelly O'Grady, who joins me from New York. Kelly, always great to see you, especially on a day like today when there's lots of action, lots of things we're going to be looking for as this week progresses. But what details have emerged from the trade deal? And for the Europeans, I guess the main consideration is what price economic peace?
Well, I think from, the European perspective, Weijia put it best, it's a 27-nation bloc. You're going to have people and countries that want different things, but it's a lot better than a full-blown trade war between these two countries. Now, the details, I think, that the U.S. would describe as a win, that $750 billion buying of energy, that commitment from the EU, as well as $600 billion invested in the U.S. We're not sure exactly where. And for automakers, from the European Union's perspective, they got that 25% sector tariff moved down to 15%. If you're Mercedes, that's certainly better than it was. But definitely from the analysts and investors that I'm talking to, this was a win for American businesses and investment, American businesses that sell into the EU, but a loss for American businesses that are buying those European goods. And Major, you have to think, okay, well, if they're not able to absorb that full 15% tariff, what does that mean for you and me? And what does that mean to the inflation rate?
Foreign direct investment in our country, a huge driver of jobs and industry. So that's a big component part of this. I'm glad you mentioned that, Kelly. What else are we looking for as this week progresses economically?
Major, this is the economic Olympics week, okay? I hope I've been training hard enough. But look, this week we've got thank you. We'll see. The Federal Reserve interest rate decision. We've got the jobs report out on Friday. We have inflation data, the Fed's preferred gauge, on Thursday. And we also have a slew of company earnings. I'm talking Meta, Microsoft. These are big drivers of your 401k. So investors are they're happy with that EU trade deal, but they're bracing for what will come in this week ahead. I think that Friday jobs report is going to be very, very critical. Also happens to fall on the new tariff deadline on August 1st.
When it comes to economic analytical fitness, that's a hard thing to say on live television, but I got it out. It took me 2 efforts. No one can outshine Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, thank you so much.